Okay, we got this little guy.
Can we get rid of the
Some minor
fries? Yeah.
Good. Okay, 5 technicians to run this. Okay, so we're going to talk about the daisy family or the sunflower family. And we're going to approach this in a sequence of a little bit of taxonomy and some facts. And then,
This is what's showing you on Zoom.
whoa.
The magic. prince.
And then we're going to do a little bit of botany. And then we're going to do how do you recognize these blasted plants?
Yeah.
So this is knowing the daisies in New Mexico. Here where the daisies are present, and wherever it's green, they're absent. Okay? So that gives you an idea, and you probably know it. You cannot avoid these things. They're everywhere. But what you tend to do is say, they're not at all interesting. I don't want to deal with this. And so I'd like to make them interesting, I hope, so that you will want to deal with it, because I think we can help a lot there. So here's what Nada and I did, right? She is the person who did the design, all the setting of type, all of that kind of stuff. It was package ready for the printer in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's just an amazing job. What I did was run around and photograph, sometimes with her, sometimes without her. But this is the general process. First of all, we would go to the internet. And by the way, this could not have been done when we got the idea, which is in the late 80s, because of the technology that's developed since. And the technology that's developed is that the herbaria have been databased to the point you can get on the internet and find where things are precisely, particularly now with GPS. Okay, so this is binder full of where things are found in the United States. Then we put that into a spreadsheet that was about 40 columns wide and 450 long. That would get us to wherever we needed to be at which time of year to find what we were going to look for. And then we would record in various colors and things at the stage of this. So this means everything's done, we're free to go. This means we still have a lot to do. This means we've done nothing, for example, on that. Okay, then the third thing that was so important, that the flora of North America was completed so that every genus treated in a modern sense was there. But the flora of North America used an old classification system that I'm going to introduce the idea of tribes now that group the Compositae or the Asteraceae, as they're called, into different tribes. It used an older one. This book, 2009, used a new one that pulled them together using molecular and morphological evidence. And so our little book here is a distillation of everything that's ever been collected, synthesized in North America, and treated in a modern sense. Made, I hope, available to the interested amateur. And that's what we were after there. After teaching plant tax all those years, I realized, I think this can be done. All right. This is off of a 57 Plymouth, by the way. We are talking about the Asteraceae. This ACE ending means it's a family. And what taxonomists did in the 1980s is say, let's make everything consistent and get rid of these old names. We call them the Compositae. All right, so the family actually has 2 names, both of them legitimate, but this consistent with all the families, this relying on some Latin translations or just Latin communication from the 1700s. And the sunflower family, the Asteraceae, is called the Compositae, and it's the sunflower family. Okay. Why should we even deal with them? Well, They're everywhere. You saw that. There's not a place in New Mexico you can go and not find one. I guarantee you that. Oh, a cement sidewalk and parking lot. But if there's a crack, there'll be Asteraceae. It's the largest plant family. There are 32,000 plus species. It may actually be smaller than the Orchidaceae. We're not sure. Argument back and forth. It's one of the 5 major families, 1,900 genera, 43 of these tribes. We'll talk about those in a minute. 425 in the US with 2,400 species. That's more than I can remember. And so what you need to do is begin to group them into groups that make sense to you, that you can remember and say, wait a minute, I know that this thing belongs in that group, and then I can go from there and find it easily. And I'll show you how we do that pretty quick. It's an economically important family. Okay. The biggest thing is the sunflower oils, seeds, and meats. There's about $500 million a year in that in the United States alone. Lettuce comes along there. Everybody has lettuce all the time. Artichokes are incredibly important, as we all know. Okay. And then there's a lot of other things. And then there's negative things too. There's lots of weeds, rangeland, plants that degrade the rangeland. If we've degraded it, they'll degrade it even farther. Okay. So it's an important family. Why are they so difficult to learn? Well, one, there's 1,000 species. How many did I say in the US?
2,400.
2,400. Yeah, so that's, I couldn't remember. Thank you. I can't remember that. Also, there is structure that just tangles us up. And we have a concept here that we want to at least introduce. It's homology, where you have parts that are similar, traceable to, or not, traceable to a common ancestor. And we'll talk about that as we look at illustrations. And analogy, parts that are similar but are different in their evolutionary origin. Okay, and those two things really tangle you up, because that means you have to have technical terms out the kazoo. And that's what we have in the Asteraceae. All right. Also, let's remember that evolution builds on past success. And so once you get a really interesting innovation, interesting evolutionarily, then it can build upon that and do all kinds of things with it. And we'll look at that too, okay? A little bit. And then you are screen sharing. That's anyway, we're also going to use a rank that is unfamiliar to most of you people, okay? And so we'll talk about what that rank is maybe next. I can't quite remember. Oh yeah, this is pretty neat. It tells me what's next. Okay? How could I remember that? All right. Too far. Okay. Here's what you did in the 8th grade, or senior or junior in high school. Okay? Kingdom, division, class, order, family, genus, species. That's classification, right? Remember that? That's internationally mandatory. Every organism has to go into that structure. On the other hand, Mother Nature's a little bit messy. And so now and then it's very useful to be able to insert categories that help you group at a reasonable level so that you can be consistent with evolution and yet have something that's utilitarian. And so here we have 2,400 genera, which is way too many, in this family with 30,000 species. But this alternate category, tribe, is valuable in that it groups things together that can be recognized 80 to 100% of the time. And it's at a size you can deal with. And so we will be talking about tribes, which are an evolutionarily real thing, grouping the genera together in the family Asteraceae. And so that's the tribe. The tribe has this ending here of more vowels, EAE. And then you end up with these words that are just long strings of vowels. Try to say that. Okay, I'm going to go Eupatori, E. It sounds like that squeaky door, you know. Eupatori, E. But that means tribe, whenever you see it. They are widely known as the DYCs, which in polite company are the darn yellow compounds. Okay? And there they are. Red, white, and blue. Okay? Here we have 3 different tribes. This one, this one, this one. This is the only one that you can say, wow, I can really see that's different, because it does not have these differences between the peripheral flowers and the central flowers. You see, that's 2 different kinds of flowers. Got to talk about that in a minute too. Anyway, it's widely known as the DYCs. If you don't believe it, take a look. And this is why you go ahead and say, oh, gee, I don't want to fool with those things. Okay, so I have here, I think 11 tribes. Yes, that's what it says down there. And they look rather similar or really different, or even this, and you say, I can't deal with this. And so these have within them a suite of genera that are similar enough, you can group them together at this tribal level. And once you know that, once you estimate tribe, then you can go to a popular book that puts all the tribes together and color codes them on top. And you can say, wait a minute now, I've gone from 450 to just 25 that I have to deal with, because I can recognize that tribe. And that's the idea behind this, is to how do you get to tribe? Then you have to go elsewhere. You can go to Kelly's Key in Kiefer, New Mexico, or you can go to the internet and say, show me this thing, because you can go ahead and page through this and say, I think I got that. I think so. And then you go and try to confirm it. Now, let me tell you, after working for 50 years in this business, I still go and say, I think I got this, but I'm not sure. And you have to go ahead and confirm it by saying, I'm going to go look here, I'm going to go look there, I'm going to find this technical work, whatever it might be. I often go to the internet and say, yep, I got it. Okay. So anyway, that's the idea. It helps you narrow the field down to something you can deal with. All right. What's the problem then, if it's so blasted easy? Okay, first of all, let's remember this homology analogy thing. This guy is screaming out there up in Dabaca County saying, I am not a flower. Now you call it a sunflower, but it's not. It's a group of flowers all in this head. And that's an analogy. That's analogous to a flower, the way it functions. But developmentally, it's very, very different. So we have these confounding problems with popular and scientific terminology that's involved with this complex reproductive structure, the big sunflower head, with the big words for precisely distinguishing analogous structures, involucre versus calyx, okay? Conspicuous, eye-catching homologous structures that are often similar in the family, but they come from different origins. Now, they're different in the family, but they come from a common origin. I twisted that one around. Lots of species, popular books that are very limited, obviously so. I mean, you can't put 2,400 species in a book and have people get through it. And there's not a comprehensive source to get the big picture, except now. Okay, so here we go. What has happened? And remember, evolution builds on past success. Here we have a sunflower head. That sunflower head, if we cut across it, and if you're in the workshop tomorrow, that's what we'll be doing, so you can see these parts. You cut across it, and you can see that there's all these little structures in here, and then these big long structures on the edge, and this is one that's mature. So what do we have in those parts there? Talking Margin Gibson. Oh, Talking Margie Gibson.
That's you, actually.
I'm Margie. Good to know. Good to know you, Rich. Okay, let's take a look at this. Here's what we're looking at. This little dewflappy here, this green thing, looks like a sepal in a flower. It's actually a filary. Those are all grouped into this ring around there called an involucre. Have to have those terms. Then in the center, you have these little tiny things that are actually flowers. These are buds at this point. Those are flowers that are open. You can see that. And they have little bracts in between them that look like these on this door, and they are homologous, but they are very different in looks. And that's this difference right here, this thing versus this white thing. And these white things here are scales on this structure, which is called the receptor. Once you get that structure, you can begin to really muck around with it and make all kinds of very different kinds of things. And one of the things you can do is take these kinds of flowers and just take them and pull one edge out, just like that. And you get these flowers that are around the edge. They look like petals, but they are really not petals. They're analogous to them. They work like petals do. They are attractive. They bring the insects in, but they are not. They're an entire flower. They're an entire flower that's pulled out all to one side. So you have this head of little flowers, we call them florets, that's a diminutive term, florets, that are all packed together to look like a flower. That allowed all kinds of ability for a change of innovation, building on past success. So here's your botany lesson. Here is an everyday flower diagram. In the center, well, here's the ovule. In the center is the ovary. That's the female part. Here's the male part, stamens, then the petals, and then around the edge are the sepals. And we have terms for those. The sepals altogether are the calyx. The petals altogether are the corolla. Goes on and on like that. E-I-E-I-O. But what's one of the innovations that really makes it look different, but is just a simple change of evolution building on past success? Well, for one reason or another, and it may be to protect them from insects or something like that, the ovary can sink down in the flower and the other parts can grow around it, make a cover, and it becomes an inferior ovary versus a superior ovary. Now take that and move it into the Asteraceae, and all you've done is make some parts that are different. So here's your sepals right here. Those are the green parts, but now they're no longer green. They're called the pappus, sitting on top of the flower, of the ovary, sorry. Okay, you've also joined the petals all together, and we still have the ovary sitting in the center with all the parts joined around it. And this part up here, or up here, is where the pollen lands and begins to germinate, send the sperm down into the ovule. Okay, so from this, it could have gone two ways. Actually, this arrow might have gone down here too. You either have a flower that's radially symmetrical like that, and I'm going to be using my 5 fingers like this, because there are 5 petal lobes on this corolla. Or you can take it and pull it to the side like this. Now watch this, it's going to be a bloody mess. You can pull them out like that and off they go. In this case, we did 3, okay, to make another kind of floret. So this you find in the center of that head that we were looking at a minute ago. And this you find around the periphery. This is the ovary down here, surrounded by all the bases of the other parts grown tight to it. Here are these scales right here. That's called the pappus now, that ultimately evolved from the calyx, evolution building on past success, giving you this structure called the pappus. Let's stop. And does anybody have any question on where we're going? What we want to do is look at these flowers that are in the center of the head and around the periphery as we begin to work with the Asteraceae. Let's look for just a minute how this functions, because that's a bit of marvelous biology, I think. So these are the flowers in the center of the head. At this point, this part here happens to be called the style. It is not mature yet, hasn't pushed through. It's up here around the anthers. And in the anthers, which is where the pollen is produced and released, those are fused together in a ring. Well, maybe we can do it like this, around the style. And what's going to happen now is the style is going to push up through it like that. And you can see that happening on these plants. It's just amazing, really. Okay, so there it begins. At that point, the anthers lose their pollen, loose their pollen or release it. Okay, this thing pushes up through the style, pushes up through, and then it opens up. Now it's receptive, and notice its own pollen is on the backside, and new pollen will be coming in here. A bee walking around is going to be picking up this pollen. Remember, this is a little thing, it's only that big, okay, in the middle. And that helps enforce outcrossing, okay, because overall outcrossing is a good thing for mixing up genes. So anyway, that's the way it works. It's kind of like a plunger coming up through there. Pretty slick. Okay, so here's where we are now. We have a typical daisy head. We have around the outside these flowers that have been modified all over one side like this, called ray florets or ray florets, yes. They're usually three-toothed at the tip in many of the Asteraceae. The disc florets are in the center. They're smaller usually. They're 5-lobed. They're symmetrical. They're radially symmetrical. And on the backside, you have all of these structures that are called filaries arranged in an evolution. Now, what do you do when you want to begin to identify Asteraceae? These are the questions you ask yourself, and this is where you look. First of all, are there these ray flowers present or absent? Okay, is it all ligulate flowers or are they mixed, one kind or another? And then the most important part you're going to see at this stage is at the back of the flower, looking at the involucre. Okay, and that's where we have to look to begin to get these things organized into tribes. And we'll be taking a look at that. Now, even on this one, you can see that each filary is lined with a very, very thin, dark tissue, and it's translucent. Now, it could be pale or it could be dark, but whenever you see that, and the plant smells like maybe Vicks Vapor Rub, something like that. So you have this very aromatic smell, and you have these filaries with a very thin tissue paper-like edge. You've got the tribe Anthemidae. And there you go. Now you've taken all of those daisies that you find down to only 22 possibilities in the United States. That's the idea. Just those two things will do it for you. And so that's the tribe Anthemidae. Anthemidae is important because that's where you get chamomile tea. Okay. So now you've got one tribe, just like that. Now let's take a look. This is what we really look at. The tribes, I'm going to show you a picture of this, have been recognized for years and still by the shape, the hairs, and the receptive surface on those stigma branches that stick up. And that's where your information really is. But that's hard to see. Even if you have a good hand lens, you can't see that easily. So you need then to look for some other sorts of features. This is the same sort of thing looking at the anthers, but it's not nearly as useful as this is. That's really the touchstone of it. So you look at the features of the filaries, you look at the features of the pappus, that's pretty easy. We'll look at some. That sits on top of that little seed-like fruit at the bottom of the floret in the Asteraceae. The kinds of florets, are they all ligulate? So we have to have a fancy term there. That means, are they all pulled to one side? Or are there ray florets and disc florets in the center, or are there all disc florets? And then you can look at the features of the ray florets. Are the plants aromatic? And either, this is what I think about, they're either no odor to speak of, it smells like fixed vapor rub, or it smells like lemon scented furniture polish. And those are the two really major smells, and they'll give you tribes right away. Is the sap milky or is it clear? Is the foliage spiny or not? And is the receptacle with or without those scales that I showed you earlier that are in the center of the structure that's called the disc in the middle of the floret head of the flower head? We're not going to spend a lot of time with this, but looking at those style branches, these are the kinds of things that separate the different tribes. Here's the Eupatoriae, we'll see those, the Eupatorian family, they look like pipe cleaners. Here's the sunflower, they look like big spear tips. Here's the aster family, they look like dagger tips. And then Helene, desert marigold would be Helene, you might know desert marigold. They look like little paintbrushes. Okay, so those are the technical characters that make the tribes. But we have others that we can use from the outside. So now we're going to go look at examples of the Asteraceae from large and or common tribes in New Mexico. And these are easy to not so easy. And I do have this for people if they like it. You can start this side if you don't. Thank you. The other side, and we have a few more here. Let me just pass them up the middle. This sort of ranks your effort. Okay. Thank you. When you're faced with the Asteraceae, you have 2,400 species, and you need to learn the tribes. Maybe it's easy if you just take the easy ones out first, and then take those that you don't need to know and forget them, because you don't need to know them all here. You're just not. You're not here, and they're not here. The tribes, and then you know which ones that you're going to have to really wrestle with, and that's the last little bunch of say. You're going to struggle with these, and we'll take a look at these. But anyway, you can sort of rank your effort easy to very difficult. This might be the easiest one of them all. And that is the tribe called Chicory, which is the chicory tribe that has the dandelion in it. It has salsify in it. And all the flowers are pulled to one side, all the florets are pulled to one side, like this here. And they all have 5 teeth at the tip. It's one kind of floret that's very different from all the rest. The minute you see that, you say, it's got to be chicory. Look at the sap. The sap is milky. It's the only tribe we have where that's really consistent. Okay, there are few species in other tribes, but you never get them mixed up. We'll have no sap. Okay, so that's one very easy chicory tribe, the chicory tribe. 49 species, 49 genera in the US. Now you've taken the 425 genera and gotten down. Only you have to deal with 49. And they're in there, by golly. And they're in there, I hope, in some kind of organization you can work with. Another one that's fairly easy is the Cardui, also called the Sinari, which is the thistle tribe. And if you find anything with stickers all over it like that, you've got the Sinari. So that's easy. And then they don't have any ray flowers. And you say, wait a minute, Rich, look at those things around the edge. And if you look at those things around the edge, each of them has 5 lobes. They've just been pulled out a long ways. Evolution builds on past success, okay? So you have something that has all disc flowers, all of them radially symmetrical, and you take the ones on the edge and you just make them longer. but you don't make them flat and 3-toothed or 5-toothed. Okay, so they're not ray flowers. They look like it, and you say, aha, okay, this is the Sonari. The Phyllories always have some kind of prickles on them. Real prominent ones, or maybe just those like comb teeth, like this one here, which you have here in the hilo. It's really pretty. This is the only one that I know of in our area. And even then, it has a little spine at the tip. But one of the things that'll give them away, and it's something you can see, is that style. Now, that's the thing that's coming up through the anthers. Okay, this is the style here. Has right at the base of those two branches a hairy ring. And you can see that a little bit right here. See that? That little thicker part, that's that hairy ring. And if you see that, you say, I've got the thistle tribe. Well, that takes you to 17 out of the 400 and some odd in the United States. Let's take it. We're going to look at some thistles now here. Here's the thistle, the Canada thistle. See, this one has virtually no stretching of those flowers around the edge. This has a little bit, maybe. These are the three big ones, the Canada thistle and its relatives, the musk thistle and its relatives, and the Scotch thistle. And the way you tell those apart is really pretty slick. I can see this, maybe you can't. Okay, that's always good for an instructor to say, you know? Okay, but on this one, the bristles are plumose. They're like ostrich feathers. You can see there's the center part, and then it has these little branches on it. The minute you see that, it's Circium. This one does not have that at all. It's Carduous. And then this one, those bristles pop right off immediately. It just comes off. And so you can get those three genera right away. Easy to do. They all look very much alike, but generically they're different. And then one last thistle slide. Here's saffron, where we get the saffron dye. And actually, the seeds make flour too. And then artichokes. There's the commercial artichoke right there. These are the Phyllories. So when you have artichoke, just enjoy those Phyllories. You know, you scrape the flesh off on your lower teeth and just whip a little bit of sauce on it. This is what it looks like in the wild. Okay, the weedy artichoke. Really a thistly, really a nasty thing. Walking through that was no fun, by the way. Now, here's one of those very easy tribes. They're not important, but we have them here, and they're just fun. One is desert holly. You know that plant from around under the creosote bush down on the desert of desert elevation. And what these two tribes have, in fact, the Nasawi was really just pulled out of the Mutisae with some consistency fairly recently. Okay, rather than have 5 lobes all the same as in those disc florets of the normal Asteraceae, they've been pulled 2 ways. 3 of them go out and 2 of them go up. Okay, and so you have this bilabiate, 2-lipped bilabiate flower shape. So 3 out and 2 up. If they're about equal, they're in the Nasawi. If they're very unequal, and here you can see them here. This is in the center where they're very small. The long one and the short one, and here the short one's right here. And then the long one. And this is the Gerbera daisy that you go into Albertsons and buy because they're really pretty with the white, yellow, red, pink, and various mixes. Now, when you go out this spring, here's a real fun Mutisae. This plant comes up before the leaves come on the trees, all over our forests here. This grows from our area south into the Sierra Madre. In the spring, it has flowers that open up and release their pollen, and that's called chasmogamy. I love this term because it means mating in a chasm, sort of thing. Or anyway, throw your gametes out there and let it, what happened. In the summer now, the same plant dies down and then comes back up, produces these leaves, and makes cleistogamous flowers. They never open up. And I like the term cleistogamous because it means mating in a closet. Okay, and everything's done inside the flower. There are very, very few Asteraceae like that, just so you know, you have something very unique around here. And in fact, you guys know Russ Kleinman. He's the one that told me where to find this thing in the Black Ridge. It's not hard to find. You just have to be Johnny on the spot and be there at the right time. Okay, so those are two very easy tribes. You could get rid of them because they only give us 5 species, but they're easy to recognize, so you want to know them. We have some endemics in New Mexico. I think there's about 30 endemic Asteraceae. I'm not quite sure. One of them is in the genus Peridili. And the Peridili tribe is really easy because I've been talking about 5-lobe flowers. It's 4-lobe. So those flowers, rather than having the 5 lobes like my hand, have only 4 lobes like that. And that right away says Peridili. Then that gets you right down to only 2 genera. The other one is tail leaf, this one right here. That's a very common subshrubby thing about this tall or so that are in the canyons on the rocks around here. And there are some other characters that help too, but basically it's that 4-lobe corolla. You know what an endemic is? It's an organism that grows within a certain defined area and you don't find it anyplace else, okay? So there are some endemics in New Mexico. It doesn't mean rare, it just means it's very limited range. Here's an easy one. Big family, 28 tribes. And in this one, there are never, ever any ray flowers, none. It's always disc flowers, always those 5-lobe flowers. What makes them easy to recognize is those stigma branches stick out like long pipe cleaners that little dwarfs might use, you know, little miniature pipe cleaners. Here they are, the many, many, there's only 2 per floret, 2 per flower, but you have lots of flowers in these sets, so you have lots of them. Some of them have very inconspicuous flowers, but they have very, very long branches. The Eupatorium, 28 genera there, okay? Knocked down. Another one that's very easy. This is the one that smells like furniture polish to me. If you pick up that odor, and one of the things I do when I don't know these Asteraceae, I smell them. And I think, okay, smells like Vicks Vapor Rub Antimidi. Check it, sure enough, got those very thin, translucent filiary margins. This one has glands on the filaries. You see those here? They're like blisters, they're often dark, or here they're greenish, but they're still there in the chichweed. Whenever you see that, you know the tribe Tajidi. Now you've taken the 424 things, and now you only have 16 different genera. It makes it really a lot easier, and that's the idea. Okay, this one's a funky one right here, Tithodia paposi. I forget who it was crossing the plains, and he says it's just nauseous. That's odor, because he was in a wagon crushing with me. Another very, very easy one is the Senecio 25 genera. We have lots of those here. The thing that really helps with this one is that all the filaries are the same length, lined up just like my fingers are right now, but I can almost get them the same length all the way around. And they have a pappus of very, very fine white hairs. Put those 2 characters together and you've got this tribe in the bag. This is an endemic in the Sacramento Mountains where cloudcroft is. This is a widespread weed all over the roadsides here in New Mexico. Then there's a bunch of things that aren't that pretty. I mean, that's true. This happens to be an Australian thing, which is the straw flower. And here, the filaries, which are ordinarily green, become very stiff and colorful. So stiff, translucent and colorful, but almost all ours are just white. And these are little tiny guys, sort of ugly, you know. And this one, for example, up close is pretty, but it's not really a striking plant. On top thing, clammy cut. Okay, whenever you see that, it's easy. Never any ray flowers, stiff, translucent is in the tribe Gnaphalae. Now they get tough. The asters are a gold mine for people who want to be specialists. Okay. And the way you look at them is that they have fillers that are often narrow and overlapping. There's two huge groups that have many, many narrow rays. They have either bristles or scales for a pappus. But it's these narrow filaries and overlapping, it's these narrow rays and overlapping filaries that really help you. And what that does is say, now you're into a very difficult group of 77 tribes. And those are the ones you tend to work with last. Although if you're happy enough with just say, okay, fine, that's the tribe Asteraceae, then you're home free. And here's another thing that's happened. In 1990 or so, the genus Aster, as we knew it in the United States, had 174 species in it. That was broken up into these 7, 14, 18, 20 genera or so. The biggest one, Symphyotrichum, with 90 still. That's a devilish thing. Even I don't like to fool with it. It's just too hard to do. But Aster now has only 2 species in the US, only 1 native one, up in the northern Rockies and then north from that. So those 174 species have been fractioned into these 18 genera or so. It's a tough one, no question about it. Look for the narrow rays and those overlapping fillers. But even that leaves you standing by the roadside right away, because Guttaresia, for example, our range matchweed or snakeweed, it's Asteraceae. Here you see these things overlapping. If you get down in there, you'll see that it has a pappus of scales, but it doesn't have those really narrow rays. And Guttaresia is just a very variable genus. You can see here, this one's got 1 ray flower and that's the entire head. 1 ray flower and 1 disc flower in the center. This one has 4 or 5 ray flowers and a couple of disc flowers. This one has even more. So lots of variation, but the technical characters hold that together. Blow the thing up here. The other really big one, tough one, is the sunflower tribe. And the sunflower tribe itself has been divided up into about 5 more tribes. We'll take a look at one of them. But this is the economically important one. This is the Kansas field in the morning. Very pretty, very, very pretty. What helps here is that if you look at the back of the flower, it has very big, broad, greenish filaries that are overlapping. It has ray flowers. And I want to call attention to this because it's something that really helped me when I finally realized it. That come together and they taper at the tip. Now, we don't have anything to contrast that with, but we will in a second. Okay. And then the pappus is usually of a few scales that fall off. It's not that this didn't have a pappus, they just fell off. They fall off. And what helps you here is the green filaries overlapping, fairly conspicuous, and tapering ray flower tips. Technical characters, it's got that big lance-shaped stigma branch, hairy all over. In this group are things that you would say, wait a minute, that's just not Asteraceae. It doesn't look like it at all. These are those things that give you hay fever, ambrosia, ragweed, okay? And it's really a nifty structure. Here's the flowers that release the Here's the flower heads that release the pollen at the top of this branch. Here are the female flower heads that receive the pollen and make the seeds. Here they are mature. This is burr ragweed. Question or stretching? Okay. Whenever you see this, two kinds of flowers, just think right away, the genus Ambrosia and the family tribe Helianthae. Also, this has got a neat adaptation. All those others that are insect pollinated, the style comes right up, I'm sure it does. The style comes right up like that and pushes the pollen through. This one, the anthers are all fall apart. There is no style coming up through them, and they're male. Okay. And that's so the wind can shake out the pollen. It's really kind of neat. And you can see that here. They're all kind of messy, disorganized. You can see that at all. And that's a characteristic of this group in the tribe Helianthae. Whenever you see that, go ahead and say that's what the tribe is. Then you can get it right away. Now, here's the tribe Helianthae here that we're looking at currently, with the broad greenish pillaries, the tapering. This is still tapering, tip of the ray flowers, and then the bracts that are on the receptacle, the base of the flower. That's Helianthae. And then one of the tribes that have been pulled out of it is the Helene, and there's been 5 or 6 others that we're not going to go into tonight. The Helene usually has no bracts on the receptacle. See that receptacle's just, we call it naked. The receptacle is naked. These are the filaries around the egg. Okay, the rays are usually blunt. And you see that, and that's the contrast that really helps. And they're prominently 3-lobed. And once you see that, you say, okay, I've got the tribe Helene, which gives you now a limitation of only 12. But those are tough. The Helianthae, Helene, the Malariae, and others close to it. All right. So here's what we've done. We've taken 13 tribes, 317 genera. If you learn those 13 tribes, or we've covered 75% of the genera of the US, which is really a pretty good accomplishment when you think about it. If you drop off these 2 tough ones here, you're dropping off about 120, which brings you to 300 here, which is about 60%, 55% from here up. You know them just like that to try. Okay? So this is a saying here, once you get to genus, the rest is easy, that a professor at Austin, University of Texas told me, and he is not right. So that's the place where I stop here. Easy, but you're not done. Okay, because we're going to have a test now. Would you close the door so they can't leave? No, I'm okay. Here you go. What tribe? Milky sap? Yep. Good. See, you knew it. Okay, let's go down here. The receptacle has folded bracts. Look at the filaries here. Yeah, but this is, look at that. See, Mother Nature's going to do it to you all the time. Okay, but it's not often. She's pretty considerate. So if we do the folded bracts and these broad green filaries, what's your best guess, given these are your choices? By the way, the bottom one is, I can't tell you because the bottom one is this one here. We haven't got there yet. So there are 5, so it's perfect matching. Which tribe would you take for that? Helianthae? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, now this one here. Look at those big spines on the filaries. No ray flowers. Which one would you pick? Thistle tribe. And that's the one that Since we're screen sharing, that's the secret. All right, and now talking Margie again. Over here, we have long style branches, no rays. Eupatorium, yeah, here. See, you've learned a lot here. It's not that hard to do. One thing I forgot to mention. This whole tribe is never ever yellow in the DYCs. Okay, so that's a help too. If you can say it's not yellow, and it has no rays and those long branches on the styles they have. And then the last one's one of the real tough tribes, pest by elimination. But it has these very narrow rays and there are lots of them. That helps. Okay. Okay. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them. All of it is in the book, and then some.
Just gonna see if our Zoom people have any questions.
Okay.
Can. Dave, help.
I've actually been monitoring the chat on
Oh, on your,
my phone. but
okay,
Stop sharing. Go to chat. Oops. I say go to chat. Not yet.
so does anyone on the Zoom audience have a question? Guess not.
There's about, or as much, one or the other.
Very helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you tell us the difference between Macaranthra and Diateria? If you can understand the way I pronounced it.
Let's go ahead and see. No, I can't. And one of the things is Macaranthra only has 2 species, and Deuteria has about 10. No, it has about 10 total. Yeah. So let's see, they're going to be together here. That's one thing we've done was we put similar ones together. It's not alphabetic in that regard. So Macaranthra 142. I think I know what it is, but it's always dangerous to spout off which is I'm not sure of. Yeah. In Macaranthra, the filaries are spreading or reflect, so they stick out. If this is the head here, the filaries around the involucre stick out or hook down like that. Whereas that's not the case. They're more lined up like this, a little floppy on the tip in Deuteria. And there's got to be some other characteristics too, but I don't know what they are. Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Watery eyes, one of the problems of a dry climate and medication. Okay. Yes.
Actually, Rich, I've had something that's bothered me for probably 30 years. Reading on some of the keys, they talk about the stigmatic portion of the style branch, as opposed to, I guess, the non-stigmatic.
That's right.
What are they referring to?
Well, they're referring to the precise spot that's receptive to pollen. And usually the stigmatic part forms 2 lines on either side of this branch. And there's not an awful lot of diagnostic features in the stigmatic lines or the stigmatic areas. Sometimes they're well divided, sometimes they're not, and that's about it. The rest of it is it a long, narrow stigmatic branch? Is it shaped like an arrowhead? But the stigmatic area stays pretty much the same. It is always, I'm pretty sure always, on the inside, like this, and there'd be 2 lines there.
Okay, so
And it's
what's on the inside?
the stigmatic area or the stigmatic
These 2
lines.
So what's on the outside?
On the outside is a lot of hairs, and they're called sweeping
Yeah.
hairs. And they're the things that push the pollen up through the
Okay.
tunnel that the anthers form.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
How important is this family for medicinal purposes, not traditional remedies?
it's used in a number of traditional teas and things. Chamomile is one, it's a calming tea. One of the things that they're learning, I can't remember the name of the compound. They are liver toxins. And that's the characteristic of so many medicines. If you use them too much, they're toxic, And so you'll find in the markets in Mexico many kinds of herbal cures made from members of the Senesionae and the Tegidae, which are not good over long haul. They're a degradation of the liver and kidneys. But they are important medicinally in that regard.
We have a question from Zoom as to whether or not the big spreadsheet is available publicly.
No, it is not, but if they want it, I'd certainly be glad to give one. It's a monster.
Okay.
Yeah, all they need to do is email me. I'd be glad to email it to them. I'm pretty sure I still have it. I think it's something a person really doesn't want because the information. The information on it is general. For example, I went through the floor of North America and they would say blooming from June to August. And so I would score that thing for blooming in those months so that I knew not to go to Maine in the winter to try to find something that blooms in August. And there is nothing about locations in there other than it's in this state.
Yeah.
And then what I did is I searched all the generic names. I don't have that slide up there. And made Excel spreadsheets of the collection records from herbaria that we could then go to in certain counties, in certain places, that we either went there because we wanted to get that plant or we knew we were going through it to get something else for them. Okay, but the spreadsheet, I'd be glad to send it to anybody that wants it, but it's not that good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Across the hall. And don't forget to get your book.
Yeah, and we'll be glad to sign it for an extra 3.5.
Thank you, Rich.
You're welcome. Who said that?
Hi, Rich, this is Gordon Berman in Las Cruces.
Ah, Gordon, hi.
Hi.
Somebody had raised Ronald Rose, so I clicked on that.
Thank you for your experience. Now, can I just pull this out or do we have to?
I think you can pull it out. I don't think we need to eject it.
Wait, those did 20 months. Wow, thank you.
Sometimes